I went from $0 to $1 million in income on Airbnb, and here are my 8 secrets on how to get there. The first one I want to start is introducing you into the 5-50-250 plan. That's investing into 5 properties, generating $50,000 in net income on an annual basis to get you to $250,000 in net income in 5 years or less with one investment. This is a critical foundation of how I have built my portfolio to get to $1 million. I learned how to do this one time, and then I rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. I've done it 4 times. I now own 13 properties. This year, I'm on pace to do just under $1.2 million in net income. And with these 8 secrets, I'm gonna show you how you can do exactly the same thing that I've done. The first thing that you have to do is have commitment. There's way too many people, specifically since COVID and the gold rush of short-term rentals and Airbnbs, to where they've got in and they've just bought anything that they can find that's available within their price range, and they haven't been committed to the underwriting, the market research process, to only invest into properties that are making over $50,000 a year in net income. So if you can host the way that I can, and I can get you there through some training, but you're probably not gonna start out at the same level that I'm at today, just like I didn't when I first started, right? So one of the things that becomes is you gotta be able to figure out what's your net income gonna be. That takes a Proforma to be able to do that. I operated about 45 to 50% net margins. So I know, and I'm really budgeting about 40% of that. So I know I need to do about $125,000 to $140,000 a year in net income to safely be above that $50,000 in net income. And that's gonna all start in the process as I'm looking for properties. If you stay committed to this and you don't rush into something, it's gonna make it a lot easier as you grow your portfolio. So you heard me say that you can achieve the 550-250 program and generate $250,000 a year with one investment. You may be a little bit skeptical, but I'm going to kind of walk you through how this works. You really need about $75,000. It's even better if you have $100,000. But with $75,000, you can do this. Look, I just bought a property in Banner Elk, North Carolina. That literally was $675,000. I did a 10% down, second home loan. I negotiated $15,000 in seller credit that I would get back at closing. So I put essentially $67,500 down, about 3% to close. Let's say it's about $72,000 to close. But then I got $15,000 back. I had budgeted $20,000 in redesigning and decorating and everything. So that saved me $15,000 where I only had to spend $5,000 out of pocket. So I'm into the property for $77,000 with my upgrades. That's my total cash. So we look at things as cash on cash return. We look at cash flow. We look at the tax incentives, which are massive with the short-term rental loophole and market appreciation coupled with debt pay down. But for this purpose, to hit the $250,000 in cash, the only thing I'm really concerned about is my cash on cash return and my cash flow. In this case, my cash on cash is going to be close to 70%. So I'm only in for literally about $77,000 total, down payment, closing costs, and that $5,000 because of how I negotiated the deal to get that $15,000 back. And this property is going to do between $55,000 to $65,000 a year in net income. Those are the types of deals that I'm going to teach you how to find. The 6th thing is finding the right market. You know, I just told you the story of how I just made an investment, just closed 3 weeks ago before my mega STR Wealth Conference actually. And it's in Banner Elk, North Carolina, which I look at as a secondary market to the Smoky Mountains. Everybody and their brother on social media is going to be talking about Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, you know, that type of stuff, investing there. So if people are talking about it on social media, I typically steer clear of it. I'm not investing into Destin. I'm not investing into Blue Ridge, Georgia. I'm not investing into the Smokies, nor am I going into Broken Bow, Oklahoma, or Palm Springs or Coachella, you know, in Southern California. Those places have been overinvested. And what I mean by that is, I'm not going to use the term saturated because I actually like saturated markets. That means there's traffic coming in. And if I can ascend to that top 20 to 10 percentile, then I'm going to make more money than everybody else. But I'm looking for places that are lower cost to be able to enter into the market, higher tax benefits, specifically for cost segregation studies. So high dwelling value, low land value. You have sand at the beach is super expensive, so you get less cost segregation benefit. That's the tax incentives, right? So I'm looking for hosting that is not required. So if I look at the Smoky Mountains, if I buy a 4 or 5 bedroom property, I almost have to put in $50,000 into a game room. In the Banner Elk, the Boone area, Beach Mountain, Sugar Mountain, and that part of Western North Carolina, even around Asheville, North Carolina, I don't have to do that. So lower barrier to entry, lower cost, similar to potentially even higher ADR, which is your average daily rate, higher gross revenue, and higher net profit. Look for the secondary and the tertiary markets. Go where everybody else is not. The next thing is property management. You really want to self-manage. And I know a lot of people might have the mindset that, if I live in Dallas, Texas, I need to invest with a place that I can get to within an hour and be able to drive to Fort Worth or drive to Frisco or wherever that is. I'm invested all over the country. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. My closest property to me is a 2.5-hour drive. The next closest property to me is that Banner Elk property. I've got 2 there. I've got a massively big property and I've got a smaller to medium-sized property there. They're both super properties, but they're 6-hour drive. The next closest is Gulf Shores. It's a 7-hour drive. In reality, it's an hour plane flight and an hour drive to be able to get there. I'm in Montana, I'm in Arizona, I'm all over the country because I've learned how to self-manage. Look, it's pretty simple. I'm just like you and me. I'm not a wealthy hedge fund manager that had hundreds of millions of dollars to get started. I started with that one investment of 126 grand in Gulf Shores, Alabama. I know how to source my cleaners, my handymen, my plumbers, my service. I know how to automate communication with my guests. I teach you how to make it super easy to be able to self-manage to where you can automate about 90% of the profits. Because if you can automate and you can self-manage, you eliminate that 20 to 30% property management fee, and that increases your profit margin to be able to stay over that $50,000 kind of Mendoza line. That's the minimum that we want to be. And this is how you're going to build success. You're going to build profitability and be able to not only do the 550, 250 plan once, but you're going to be able to do it twice with just that one investment. But you have to be willing to self-manage. If you're not willing to do that, leave a comment down below. I'll show you really how easy it is. So revenue management is something that is super important. When we're looking for this, I'm going to teach you how to use 2 platforms to underwrite your properties. One's AirDNA, the other one's STR Insights. Founder of STR Insights is Kenny Bedwell. He's one of my original gangsters, my OGs, and my mastermind. And he's built this tool that really makes it easy for us to estimate how much revenue this property can do. So one of the things we want to try to shoot for is the 90th percentile. I don't want you to shoot for the 50th percentile or the 75th percentile. We're going to underwrite that into our performas as I teach you how to do the underwriting process so we have a good, better, and best scenario. But if we can ascend to get close to that 90th percentile, we can typically do the 550, 250 program in 4 properties, and we don't even need to be able to get to that 5th property. That can speed up the process. Remember, investing into real estate is, the tortoise is the one that's going to win the race. This is not a get rich quick scheme. This is something that we want to be patient with. We want to make sure we're making the right investments and we are doing this on our own so we don't have to pay a property manager. All of these things, and if we can really focus on 2 things, the marketing side and then the revenue management side as a self-manager, self-managed host, then we can speed up the process. And that's really what I want to see you do, especially if you are a doctor, a lawyer, a high-income W-2 that is sick and tired of the rat race and the daily grind, and you want to build this passive income. It's not really passive. I'm going to let you in on that secret. It takes work, it takes effort, but I can minimize that by about 85% for you while still maintaining a personalized relationship with your guests, but also using technology to automate. So here's the realistic goal. I'm not here to give you any line of BS. I want to be honest with you because this is not going to happen in 3 or 4 years unless you have hundreds of $1,000s to invest. If you're like me, I didn't have that when I started. I had $126,000 and I parlayed that into a $19 million portfolio, generating over $1 million a year in net income. It's taken me 7 to 7.5 years, and it's going to take you about the same time if you want to get to that 7 figures, if you want to get to that $1 million in income. And you may be sitting there thinking, well, Bill, this is a 5-year plan for $250,000. Wouldn't that take me 20 years? No, because there's a thing called repositioning. As we pay down equity, As our properties increase in value through appreciation, then we're going to be able to leverage that equity. And I'm going to teach you, it's really simple, how to do a cash on equity audit for each one of your properties. So typically by the time you get to property number 3 or property number 4, you are able to go in and reposition. What I mean by that is if interest rates are low and you're cash flowing at a pretty good rate, say $60,000, $70,000 on property number 1 or number 2, then you could do a cash out refi and take the cash out to buy property number 4, number 5. It helps you go faster. If you've really seen some massive appreciation, typically your first investment's not going to be your best. We're going to learn and we're going to improve as we go to property number 2 and 3 and so on. So then we look at selling and accessing that equity. And many times you will have built over 3 or 4 years enough equity to where you might even be able to split that and get into 2 properties, right? Or level up to a larger super property. Most of these properties in the first go around of this program are going to be under $700,000. We're really looking at like that 475 to 500 to 650, 675 range, just like that Banner Elk property that I showed with you. But that repositioning with debt pay down and appreciation to increase our equity is going to allow us to do that reposition in the middle and expedite that process. Once we get to 4 or 5 properties, now we're also building so much cash flow. And if you can get over, if your goal is 250, to where we're generating another 50,000 at $300,000 a year, now we're laying that on top of the equity to continue to value stack additional properties if you're trying to get to 500, 750, or $1 million a year in net income. So I just talked a little bit about scaling. This is really, the last step in the 8 secrets, to be honest with you. And it's something that I've done. I have a good friend, Mike Michalowicz, who wrote The Pumpkin Plan. I keep this right on my shelf behind me. He was a keynote speaker at my large conference last year. I've got the largest conference in the short-term rental space, the STR Wealth Conference. He didn't know how I was investing. And after he spoke, it was later on that night, he asked me. And I said, well, what I do is I take my lowest performing properties with the highest amount of equity, and I go in and I run an analysis. And let's just say I'm making $30,000 a year in net income, but I've got $300,000 a year in equity in the property, Mike. And that's going to take me 10 years of $30,000 a year to generate that 300 grand, where I could sell it today and get that $300,000 and go buy $1 million property, put 20% down, and still have $100,000 to redesign and refurnish. That's how I level up my properties, and I'm literally making $1 million a year in net income with only owning 13 properties. I broke $1 million last year and I only had 12. I've just added one in February of 2024. And Mike said, that sounds exactly like my pumpkin plan. And in the book, The Pumpkin Plan, if you're going to invest, I would highly recommend that you read The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz, because that's ironically, neither him or I knew this, that's really the investing strategy that I'm using to be able to scale. That's how I started with $400,000 properties and level them up to $1 million properties. Go from doing $120,000 in revenue to properties that are doing between $250,000 to $350,000 in gross revenue. That $350,000 at gross revenue, because I've leveled up 3 times to be able to get there with 3 different repositions, that now allows me to generate $170,000 to $180,000 a year in net income. That is a 3-for-1 when we're talking about starting at $50,000. That's how I'm able to scale and keep my property count low, so that way I can have a life and not have to work 50 hours a week. Look, I put in about 10 hours a week, sometimes 15 hours a week if there's an issue with maintenance or whatever. That's it. That scaling becomes super, super critical. And you can do this exact plan as well. And YouTube thinks you'll like the video on the screen, so I'll see you over there.